Welcome to Damn Good Movie Memories with your host, Brian Davis. This podcast is the cure for your long commute and super boring workday.
Here comes our boy, Michael Colin Gallagher.
Are we investigating Gallagher?
I want to know every nickel he's got and how he got it.
You're talking to a newspaper right now. Do you understand?
You can't write this.
It's murder.
Suspected in the murder of Joey Diaz. We don't have to say
no
that
murder. There's no body.
Presumed murder, then. You're missing 6 months, you're dead.
We have no knowledge the story is false, therefore we're absent malice.
The story is true.
We may say whatever we like about Mr. Gallagher, and he is powerless to do us harm.
You don't want to have anything to do with Mike Gallagher.
You gonna bust him?
I'm Michael Gallagher. Want to know where this story came from?
Suppose you picked up this morning's newspaper and your life was a front-page headline. Everything they said was accurate, but none of it was true.
That stuff in the paper, that's not true. You know that.
All I know is what you read in the damn newspapers.
Mr. Gallagher, this is Megan Carter from the Standard. Don't expect the truth unless you're willing to tell it.
I just need you to get to know me fast. You say somebody's guilty, everybody believes you. You say he's innocent, nobody cares.
I know how to print what's true, and I know how not to hurt people. I don't know how to do both at the same time, neither do you.
You want to know the truth? Okay, you want to ask me as a person? I'll tell you. You ask me as a reporter, I got no comment.
Paul Newman, Sally Field.
I'm free every night but Friday.
How about Friday?
Okay.
What the hell are you doing here? It's just a newspaper, and there it is for everybody to see.
She writes the story that sets him up. He writes the book on getting even. Absence of Malice.
Hey there, it's Brian Davis, and for this week's episode, we're going to cover the movie Absence of Malice from 1981. The studio was Columbia Pictures. Release date was December 18th, 1981. The running time 116 minutes and was rated PG. I don't have the budget numbers, but the box office took in $40.7 million, making it the 12th ranked movie of 1981. Roger Ebert at the time gave it 3 out of 4 stars. Here's his review. There are at least 2 ways to approach Absence of Malice, and I propose to take the second. The first approach, no doubt, will be to criticize this film's portrait of an investigative newspaper reporter. To say that no respectable journalist would ever do the things that Sally Field does about to and with Paul Newman in this movie. She is a disgrace to her profession. What journalistic sins does she commit in this film? She allows the fact of a secret investigation to be leaked to her. She prints an unattributed story about the investigation. Then she becomes personally involved with the subject of the investigation, as they say. In other words, she falls in love with Paul Newman. Then she prints another story she should have never printed, and you get the idea. Would real investigative reporters actually commit Fields' mistakes, misjudgments, indiscretions, and ethical lapses? Generally speaking, no, they wouldn't. And if they did, they shouldn't have. And furthermore, their editors would never let them get away with it. The unbelievable laxity of the editors in Absence of Malice creates the movie's greatest credibility gap. But let's face it, sometimes reporters do commit acts, such as Sally Field allows herself in this movie. Sometimes news of an investigation is printed without official attribution, and so on. One of my colleagues cornered me at a water fountain to say indignantly that whatever else we might think about this movie, you have to admit that no reporter would ever sleep with a news source. Oh yeah? Asked the woman who was standing by. Who was the news source? Paul Newman, I said. I'd sleep with that news source in a second, she said. And that leads us out of the first, or socially responsible approach to Absence of Malice, and into the second, or romantic approach. I not only like this movie despite its factual and ethical problems, I'm not even sure they matter so much to the viewers. In the newspaper business, we're quick to spot the errors in movies about newspaper reporters. But where were we when the archaeologists squirmed over Harrison Ford's barbaric conduct in Raiders of the Lost Ark? The fact is, this movie is really about a woman's spunk and a common man's sneaky revenge. And on that level, it's absorbing and entertaining. Sally Field's newspaper reporter is created through a quietly original performance that is not Norma Ray with a pencil behind her ear, but is an earnest, nervous, likable young woman who makes mistakes when she listens too closely to her heart, her ambition, or her editor. Which of us cannot admit the same? There's a story about a legendary Chicago editor who was presented with a major scoop obtained by dubious means. First, he convinced himself the story was factually sound. Then he issued the classic introduction, print it tonight and call the lawyers in the morning. Now, there's an editor who might have enjoyed Absence of Malice. He would not have approved of what Sally Field does in the movie, but he would have understood it. And that's the end of Ebert's review. Now, what I really love about Ebert's review is that it's fascinating because it's coming from the perspective of a professional journalist, and therefore, things that bother him about the film likely would not bother the vast majority of movie fans. And he does admit this, which is why I always enjoy his reviews, even if I don't always agree. Now, I was drawn to this film because of the stars. It has Paul Newman and Sally Field. The story then came next for me, but this is back in an era where there were bona fide movie stars that you would see any film they were in. That is no longer so. All right, let's get into the main cast. Now, I've covered the careers of both Paul Newman and Sally Field in past episodes, so I'll briefly mention the director, who is Sydney Pollack, who was one of the most respected directors in film. I did cover one of his later era films on this podcast, which was his adaptation of John Grisham's novel, The Firm, with Tom Cruise. Additional must-watch movies directed by Pollack: 3 Days of the Condor, Jeremiah Johnson, The Electric Horseman, Tootsie, and I guess Out of Africa, but I'm not a fan. And most of those all star Robert Redford. All right, let's get into the film. So it immediately begins without opening credits at a newsroom where an article about a missing Miami longshoreman union leader named Joey Diaz is being written. We then see the opening credits and a montage of the article going to press and the process of a traditional newspaper pressing. You remember real newspapers back in the day? In any case, Diaz, after months of being searched for by the feds, is now presumed dead. The feds, led by prosecutor Elliot Rosen, played by Bob Balaban, are interested in a Miami liquor wholesaler named Michael Gallagher, played by Paul Newman. He's the son of a mobster who recently died. A group of feds are watching surveillance footage of the funeral. By all accounts, Michael is a legitimate businessman and clean from criminal activity, but Elliot simply doesn't buy it, and he wants dirt dug up on Michael, and all of his finances thoroughly checked for any suspicious activity. Megan Carter, played by Sally Field, is a reporter for a Miami newspaper. She visits the federal office for any leads and hears about the feds digging into Michael Gallagher and a possible connection between him and the Joey Diaz murder. Megan decides to research the Gallagher family and dig into any leads for a possible story.
I think the strike force is onto something.
Must be an accident. What?
A guy by the name of Michael Gallagher, son of a bootlegger, Tommy Gallagher.
What have they got on him?
I don't know. But it must have something to do with Diaz because that's all they're working on.
What else have you got?
Supposedly he sells liquor. He's got a warehouse on the channel.
Makes sense. Longshoreman.
I ain't got it yet.
Can you work Quinn? He wants us to love him.
I'm not so sure how much he knows. He's the DA, but Rosen runs the strike force.
How about Rosen?
Christ, if he said word one, it'd be the first time.
Yes, sir?
Grace, there's a reporter on her way down here to see me now. When we come in the office, give me about a minute and then buzz me, all right?
Hey, Elliot.
Oh,
Michael Gallagher.
terrific.
The guy who hit Diaz.
Congratulations, you solved the crime of the century. Where'd you hear that?
If I revealed my sources, you wouldn't talk to me.
Yeah, that'd be terrible.
Come on, Elliot. The public has a right to know a few things.
Where does it say that?
There's a sign on my desk.
Yeah. Well, it'll be a dull conversation, but come on in. You want some coffee?
No, thank you.
Go.
What can you tell me about the Gallagher investigation?
I can neither confirm nor deny any investigation which may or may not be in progress in this office.
Not for attribution.
No confirm, no deny.
Background.
Can't help.
Off the record.
Off the record?
Yeah, off the record.
No comment.
You're a real sweetie.
I told you it was going to be a dull conversation. Yeah? Yeah, all right, I'll be there in a minute. Well, cheer up. Maybe you'll get lucky. Gotta go to a meeting. Oh, take your time. Have a little coffee.
under investigation. Weak. Can't we say he's a suspect?
I still don't know what he's suspected of.
Suspected in the murder of Joey Diaz. We don't have to say
no
that he's-
murder. There's no body.
Presumed murder, then. You're missing 6 months, you're dead.
Okay.
Prime suspect.
I don't know his prime. Maybe they have somebody primer. Key.
The key.
A key.
Christ, you want anybody to read this? You keep watering it down. Informed sources. Well informed.
Mac, if he wanted to leak the story, why didn't he just tell me off the record?
Instead of talking out of school, he's got you snooping through government files. Smart guy. Sources in the federal building.
That sounds like the janitor. Knowledgeable sources.
Knowledgeable sources.
Why did Rosen want it out?
Maybe he's trying to be a nice guy. Maybe he wants us to owe him a favor. Maybe he likes your leg. If we try to figure out why people leak stories, we'll publish monthly. Davidek better read this.
Oh, he's gonna love it.
And if you ever wonder why things leak to the press, well, it's often by design, as shown by this last scene. The prosecutor can claim he has no idea how the story got out, knowing full well that a good reporter will take any opening necessary to get a scoop, like leaving a confidential file on his desk and then walking out. Next, the paper's lawyer goes through Megan's article to make sure that they won't be sued if it's published.
Now then, madam, you propose to say that Mr. Michael Colin Gallagher is the proximate cause of the demise of the esteemed Mr. Diaz.
That's not what it says. It says he is under investigation.
But Mr. Gallagher will think we make him out a murderer, as will his friends, his neighbors. Let us assume that he is neither a murderer nor the subject of investigation for same. Let us suppose that your story proves to be false on its face.
This story is true.
Madam, if newspapers printed nothing but truth, they need never employ attorneys, and I should be out of work, which I am not.
I read the file.
I'm not a whit interested in the facts. I'm concerned with the law, and the question is not whether your story is true. The question is, what protection do we have if it proves to be false? Now then, Mr. Gallagher is not a public official, nor is he likely to become one. Pity. Is he a public figure?
He's not going to sue, for God's sake. So what does it take to make him a public figure?
If I knew that, I should be a judge. They never tell us till it's too late. I must admit I'd be more comfortable if he were a movie star or a football coach. Football coaches are very safe indeed. Have we spoken with Mr. Gallagher?
We don't exactly call the mafia for comment.
Please, make the attempt. If he talks to us, we'll include his denials, which will create the appearance of fairness. If he declines to speak, we can hardly be responsible for errors which he refuses to correct. And if we fail to reach him, at least we've tried.
What are you telling me, Counselor?
I'm telling you, madam, that as a matter of law, the truth of your story is irrelevant. We have no knowledge the story is false, therefore we're absent malice. We've been both reasonable and prudent, therefore we're not negligent. We may say whatever we like about Mr. Gallagher, and he is powerless to do us harm. Democracy is served.
Such a fine line, right? And this is something I learned in college regarding journalism law, and that was the difference between a public and a private figure. Private citizens have more rights when it comes to published stories over public citizens, and the nuance of trying to contact the party in question to get a statement is always interesting, since even the slightest of efforts can be portrayed as doing their due diligence for the integrity of the story. The next morning, the story is published in the paper. Megan gets a visit at her desk from none other than Michael Gallagher and promptly spills her coffee all over her desk.
I'm Michael Gallagher.
Marcia, line 4.
What do you want?
Where'd the story come from?
What can I do for you?
Want to know where the story came from?
I can't tell you that.
Oh, yeah? Who can?
Mr. Gallagher, if you want the matter clarified, I suggest you speak to the government.
I already spoke to it.
And?
It's not talking.
Mr. Gallagher, were you involved in Joey Diaz's disappearance?
No.
Can you prove that you were not involved?
I don't have to do that.
If you're not involved, why do you think you're being investigated?
I don't know. That's why I'm here.
Have you ever met Mr. Diaz?
You write about everybody being investigated?
Everybody we find out about?
What do you write about when the investigation's over and the guy's innocent?
Well, they never tell us when the investigation is over.
Mr. Gallagher, to the best of our knowledge, our story is true. Now, we appreciate your coming in to talk to us, but I'm not sure there's anything we can do. We have an obligation to report such things.
You got an obligation to tell the truth?
Of course.
Well, if you want to know what's true, how come you don't talk to me before you write what they say?
I tried to reach you. There was no answer.
You should have called back. I'm around.
I don't think this is getting us anywhere. Is there anything else we can do for you?
The last clip was great because Michael brought up a terrific point about journalism. Almost always we read stories about an investigation or negatives. Very rarely do you ever read an article about the subject being investigated being cleared when they're innocent. And then the damage has already been done, and that person, even though they're innocent, will always be labeled as guilty or a criminal. Doesn't seem fair, does it? The fact about the Fed's investigation about Joey Diaz is after 6 months, they still have nothing. So they decide that because Michael Gallagher is the son of a known mobster, Michael must be dirty, and therefore he must have ties to the murder of Diaz. It's completely flimsy, but now that the newspapers have gone along with this loose theory, the feds can buy themselves time by using the power of the press to continue to squeeze Michael for information that could lead to arrests in the Diaz murder, even if Gallagher has nothing to do with Diaz or his murder. It's a completely sleazy move by the feds. Michael then gets a visit from one of his good friends named Teresa, played by Melinda Dillon. She works as a secretary at a Catholic school and is concerned about the articles written about him. By the way, Melinda Dillon, of course, played Ralphie's mom in A Christmas Story.
What are you doing here?
I read the paper, Michael. What's going on?
Nothing. Don't worry about it. Called the school today. They said you were sick.
Oh, no. I was just worried about you, that's all.
Come on in, I'll get you something to eat. Oh, how's your dad? What did the doctor say?
He's fine. He's fine. He'll outlive us all.
Want a beer?
No. Michael, tell me what's going on.
I don't know.
Oh, is this true? Are they investigating you?
I don't know what the hell's going on. I went to the paper.
What did they say?
You ever try to talk to a paper?
What are you gonna do?
You don't need that.
What are you gonna do?
I don't know yet.
Michael,
How about some spaghetti? I'll make you some spaghetti.
I don't understand.
Well, the FBI came around this afternoon, so something's going on.
What does that mean? What'll they do?
Snoop around, talk to people. Might even ask you some questions.
Oh, my God.
Hey, it's no big deal. Just answer. Hey, shouldn't we call John and Lena and tell them that...
Michael, don't you remember where we were?
When?
When that guy, that union guy, went away or got kidnapped or whatever.
You know what?
We were in Atlanta, Michael. Don't you remember? You brought up the papers. The headlines were all about it.
I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking.
And what kind of questions are they going to ask me?
I don't know. Do you know me? How do you know me? Stuff like that.
Should I say no?
No, don't say no. I mean, of course you know me.
Oh, my God, Michael.
Hey, come on, take it easy. Maybe they will and maybe they won't. How do you know me? How do you know Michael Gallagher, Miss Braun?
I've always known him. He used to take care of me.
What's your relationship now?
He cooks me spaghetti and he nags me about my smoking. He's my best friend.
The week that Joey Diaz was reported missing, did you see Michael Gallagher that week?
Will they ask me that?
I don't know. Answer it.
Yes.
No. If they ask you that, just say, I don't remember.
I don't remember.
On May 25th, 1980, did you see Michael Gallagher that day?
I don't remember.
Where were you on that day?
So something is going on about why Michael and Teresa don't want to reveal their whereabouts. Megan contacts Michael and pleads that she really wants his side of the story, and she wants the truth no matter what. So Michael agrees to talk to her over lunch on his boat. Megan is a bit nervous as she assumes he's just a mobster that kills people without any hesitation. Michael is anything but a ruthless killer. His boat is called the Rum Runner, as his father was a bootlegger.
How far out are we? Was your father really a bootlegger?
Yeah, for a while, he did a lot of things.
What else did he do?
Was he crooked? Is that what you mean? I guess you'd say he was crooked. Want a beer?
Yes, please. People say he ran Miami.
He just had a lot of friends.
Do you?
Not the kind you mean.
Wife?
Yeah, once. Pretty lady, but she was no friend.
I thought bootlegging went out with Prohibition.
My old man was stubborn. He had this import business. Daytime bananas after midnight booze. No tax stamps. Same boat, same crate, same warehouse. It used to work pretty good.
Used to?
I don't like working nights.
When'd you get out? Oh, no, I don't mean jail. I mean, when'd you get out of bootlegging or smuggling or whatever you call it?
I never got into whatever you call it.
Why not? Sounds lucrative.
It's against the law. Aren't you hot in that?
No, thanks a lot. So you're telling me you were never in the business?
That's right. You sorry?
Are you?
Yeah, sometimes. Business is bad.
Then you were tempted.
I had no choice. My old man said no. When he said no, it was no. You really look as though you're uncomfortable.
No, this is very lightweight. You have a record.
Yeah, assaulting a federal officer. The FBI came to my old man's funeral. They brought cameras. They came to the church, they came to the cemetery, so I slugged one of them.
Oh.
What?
Nothing.
What else you want to know?
As much as you want to tell me. Look, I really do want to be fair about this.
One of those upfront ladies, huh?
I try to be.
Who's the guy in the Volkswagen? And who the hell am I talking to?
What do we do now?
Eat.
Megan turns off her wire and has lunch with Michael.
What do you call this?
Salad.
Gallagher, I'm a reporter. What'd you expect? Don't try to make me feel guilty.
You really think I had something to do with Diaz, huh?
It's a distinct possibility. If there's nothing there, then why are they picking on you?
I gotta know where that story came from. Knowledgeable sources, you said. Now, who is that? Somebody's trying to get to me. Somebody with no face and no name. You're the gopher. You listen to them, you write what they say, and then you help them hide. You say you got a right to do that, and I got no right to know who they are.
I'm sorry, Gallagher. I can't help you.
How old are you?
34?
How come you're not married?
Well, maybe I am.
How come you don't wear a ring?
Haven't you ever heard of liberation?
Most of them are ugly.
Is that supposed to be a compliment? Look, Gallagher, if they clear you, I'll write about that, too.
What page? See, you say somebody's guilty, everybody believes you. You say he's innocent, nobody cares.
That's not the paper's fault, it's people. People believe whatever they want to believe.
Who puts out the paper? Nobody?
Well, if you knew I was going to write about you, then why did you do all of this?
I want publicity, huh?
No, really. I mean, why the boat and the picnic and everything?
I didn't want you jumping up and running out of a restaurant before I got some answers.
Did you get any?
Not the ones I wanted, but some. Better get out of here.
Realizing they're being monitored by the police through helicopter and making sure Megan is safe, their lunch ends. Megan is beginning to have second thoughts if Michael was really involved and maybe completely innocent like he claims. But not only does Michael have issues about his reputation, he now has problems with the union and the allies of Joey Diaz who instruct their union members to not work for Michael's company and will demand a strike. Now, this is affecting his livelihood and could effectively shut down his business since he can't hire workers who won't cross the picket line because they're worried about being labeled as a scab by the union. Even if they like Michael personally, this is about business. Michael decides to ask out Megan for dinner in order to try to figure out her source. Even though that's his main motive, he does like her personally. Now, Megan understands what he's trying to get from her, but there's a nice chemistry between them, even if there's tension. The next day, Megan meets with Michael's friend Teresa, as Teresa wants to give an alibi for Michael regarding the Diaz murder.
I'm Teresa Perone.
I guess we know I'm Megan Carter.
Thank you for meeting me like this. Would you like a cigarette?
Oh, no, I'm trying to quit.
Oh, Michael hates it. I have a story for you.
Michael Gallagher is innocent. You were with him the night they got Diaz. You'll swear to it in court. I'm used to dealing with girlfriends.
Why do you think I'm a girlfriend?
Just a hunch.
No, I've never been Michael's girlfriend. I've known him since childhood. We're friends.
Of course you think he's innocent.
No, I know he's innocent.
How?
Well, because I was with him at the time. But I don't want you to say it was me.
I see. Where were you?
I can't tell you that.
Well, how do you remember this? I mean, it was 10 months ago.
Do you remember where you were the day Kennedy was shot?
Can you prove it?
I don't know.
Miss Perona, you're very loyal, if that's what it is. But I can't write a story that says someone claims to know Michael Gallagher is innocent and won't say how or why or even give her name.
I am assistant to the principal at San Ignacio School, and the publicity would be... I just can't.
Suit yourself.
But you printed that other story.
It was different. I knew where it came from.
You don't believe me?
Miss Perrone, I've never met you before in my life. You want me to write a story that says Michael Gallagher is innocent, and then you tell me I can't use your name. You say that you were with him, and you won't tell me where. Now, what would you do?
If I told you, I mean, just you, would it have to be in the paper? Probably. Why? If it has nothing to do with this, I mean, it's private.
Look, I can't promise you anything. I'll speak to my editors about it, but I can't promise you anything.
But I don't understand. Couldn't you say that you spoke to someone who was with him the whole time?
I'm a reporter. You're talking to a newspaper right now. Do you understand?
You said you could keep it out.
I did not say that. I said I would discuss it with my editors. Look, if you have some information about where Michael Gallagher was that night and you want to help him.
You don't understand. There was this guy. Michael hates him. Maybe he's not so hot. But, you see, I'm Catholic.
Miss Perrone, look, I really don't want to be rude, but I don't understand what you're trying to tell me, and I do have a deadline. I have to get back to the paper.
I had an abortion. I got pregnant and I didn't know what to do. I got a name in Atlanta, and Michael took me. It was 3 days. He stayed with me every day, every hour, and that's what happened.
And now you can see the conundrum that both Michael and Teresa are in. Michael will not divulge the abortion information in order to protect his friend. And Teresa wants to help Michael, but her religious reputation and job status would be ruined if she explains what she did. Megan tries to get Teresa to go on the record to help Michael, but she simply walks away. She can't bring herself to admit the truth. Megan is actually questioning herself about including the abortion information in the article. But if she doesn't include that important detail, simply saying Teresa was with him without a reason wouldn't make the story solid. Megan is unsure what to do, but ultimately writes the story clearing Michael, including the abortion alibi. Teresa reads the article the next morning and is despondent and steals all of the papers from her neighborhood so that her immediate neighbors won't find out. We then cut to the newspaper office, and one of Megan's colleagues takes her aside and gives her some horrible news. Teresa has killed herself by cutting her wrist with a razor blade. Megan is devastated by the news, guilty that she's the one that caused Teresa's suicide. All right, there's about an hour left and plenty left to unravel. How will Michael handle the death of his close friend? How will he clear his name and also try to keep his business afloat? And will there be repercussions against the federal government for their witch hunt against an innocent man? Well, it's all answered, and it brings to light the ethics of being a journalist and the fine line of journalism integrity, and simply trying to sell more papers instead of really giving the truth of the story. Now, having two top-notch actors in their prime with Paul Newman and Sally Field, it's a real pleasure to watch. And even though the story itself is really well done, it's their chemistry that makes this a must-watch for film buffs. And also, there's a great scene at the end with Wilford Brimley, who acts as his normally gruff but always memorable self. Alright, some fun facts. The film received 3 Oscar nominations, but did not win any of them. Paul Newman was nominated for Best Actor, but he lost to Henry Fonda for On Golden Pond. Melinda Dillon was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, but she lost to Maureen Stapleton for Reds. And it was nominated for Best Original Screenplay, but lost to Chariots of Fire. Now, Paul Newman at the time said the film was a direct attack on the New York Post, which had earlier published a caption for a photo of Newman that he said was inaccurate. Because of the dispute, the Post banned Newman from its pages, even removing his name from movies and the TV listings. Now, there was a press conference and a luncheon featuring Paul Newman, Sally Field, Sydney Pollack, and others at New York's Tavern on the Green restaurant. What started out as a glowing ember of discontent among reporters turned into a raging fire by the time Newman and Field were done answering questions. When a reporter from the sensationalist tabloid The New York Post introduced herself to Field, the actress responded, "Wouldn't you rather say you're from someplace else?" Despite the fact that the actress recently participated in a perfectly cordial interview with the paper. Then when Newman was introduced to the Post's Diana Maychick, He bluntly snapped, "I hate your paper." According to the screenwriter Kurt Luedtke, the film's story was inspired by the media law legal case of Times v. Sullivan in 1964. Luedtke summarized this case by saying that American libel laws, due to the precedent set by this case, indicate the truth is not always necessary to journalism in situations involving public figures. As such, a newspaper can effectively make a bad mistake or hurt a public figure, and the latter cannot always collect damages for it. How wonderful. Around the time that this film was launched into theaters, Paul Newman said, "I would say that 90% of what people read about me in the newspapers is untrue. 90% is garbage. Reporters are expected to come up with something sensational every night of the week to keep their readers' noses buried in the pages. And well, you tell me, if nothing's happening, what do? Well, in their case, they make it up." Well, back then it was newspapers. Now it's 24-hour news cycles and social media. Nothing changes. If anything, it's more immediate now. Paul Newman and director Sydney Pollack were both gourmet chefs and had a running culinary competition throughout filming, with Sally Field as the judge. Though she was a good sport at first, Field grew tired of eating gourmet meals night after night, and then she began begging not to have to do this anymore. She would rather eat hamburgers and omelets at local diners. Sydney Pollack originally wanted Al Pacino to star as Michael Gallagher, but Pacino was supposedly cast, but then dropped out. All right, we have a special guest, and that's Lindsay. And if you didn't know, Lindsay was a journalist for the first half of her career. So it was fun to get her insight about this film, and particularly the Sally Field character. So let's talk to her now, and then I'll be back next week to talk about yet another random movie from my DVD collection. Okay, we're back with Lindsay. Welcome back, Lindsay.
Hey, Brian. Hey, everyone. Really happy to be here again. Thanks so much for the invite.
Well, I don't have a choice, do I?
Not really.
That's right.
Well, I mean, yes, you do. You don't have to ask me to participate in these and do the interviews, but I'm always flattered when there's a film that you're like, hey, I want you to see this so I can get your take on it.
That's the right answer.
I enjoy giving my hot takes.
There you go. Okay, so this is one, had you heard about this?
Yes, I had heard of this film, but I can't say I had ever seen it or anything, and I roughly knew what it was about, but no, I had never watched it or even seen any of it, really. Some of these older ones I've caught like a glimpse. This one, not a peep, nothing.
So the reason I picked this one, I thought you would appreciate this one the most because you are a journalist.
Yes.
And you spent most of the early part of your career, actually the first half of your career was journalism. So
yes.
How did you feel as a journalist watching this film, not just a person watching a movie?
I think that there's so much conflict that I felt watching it about like the right things to do. I can't say that a lot of the journalism that I practiced had this level of conflict in that I wasn't doing hardcore investigative work like Sally Field's character Megan was doing, but I can so appreciate what it's like when you're working with people who are being vulnerable and are trusting you with information, and they're trusting you to be a good steward of that information. And then when you're dancing on the precipice of releasing this information and realizing that doing so is going to do half of the right things and then a whole other half of stuff that's going to really hurt people or potentially hurt people. And you're torn between the idea of like doing the right thing and telling the story because you're, in the case of Megan and hopefully in the case of a good journalist, and P.S. I'm not speaking of most modern day journalists, you would be wanting to do the right thing. And I think she really did want to do the right thing. But the collateral damage sometimes of doing the right thing is sometimes more costly than doing the right thing itself. And I could definitely feel the conflict and relate to it. Although I will say, I'm not sure her character truly appreciated what that was. Maybe because in the movie she is playing a younger, hungrier journalist. And now that I'm sort of past my prime and that I'm like, mid to late 40s here, I'm thinking more about the collateral damage, right, than like getting the scoop. And I felt like her character was not a bad person at all.
No.
She was trying to do the right things, but she was still a little caught up in the scoop.
Did you ever have a situation like that Megan was in where Rosen, who is the head of, what was the department that was...
Was he like the publisher?
It's like the the DOJ.
Oh,
So
right.
he
yes.
basically leaked the story on purpose.
Yes.
The whole point was a ruse to basically get Michael, which is Paul Newman's character. He didn't really have any evidence on him at all. He just knew that he was the gangster. He was the son of a gangster. His uncle was still a gangster. And
Guilt by association.
Right. And so let's build a case on him. And the best way to do it is through the power of public opinion and getting the press to do his dirty work for him. So once she was being a good journalist, went with it. But has that ever happened to you where you think you're being played?
I can say that looking back, I remember situations where people in the business that I was working in, the industry that I was covering, were dropping things they probably shouldn't have because they wanted to give me a tip about something, because they wanted me to look into it, and that they knew once I started looking into it, I would find certain things, and they wanted me to find that. So I have had a couple situations like that, and in the world that I used to, operate in, we'd be talking about a lot of environmental concerns.
Sure.
Like little things that people wanted me to know about potential harm to the environment, and me going out to certain organizations and associations and starting to ask those probing questions that would get at the idea of unearthing that this particular thing might be harmful for the environment. So yes, I've seen, maybe not to the incredible degree of this, meaning it was a DOJ guy and he was doing this, kind of super high level leak.
Yeah.
But I have had people do that. And you know what? Sometimes you're not quite sure why they're doing it, but there are times where you're definitely aware they're doing it. And you're like, okay, I know you didn't say that by accident, and there's a reason you said that, and a good reporter should follow up on it without inserting themselves into it. And the problem that I've experienced a lot with modern journalism, and this isn't everyone,
No.
but a lot of this is coming from, our social media gratification culture. Everyone's sort of an armchair reporter.
And that's a problem.
Oh, God, it's absolutely a problem.
Yeah.
But what you're seeing is people being very headline conscious and
Clickbaity.
scoop focused and clickbaity, absolutely. And I really am very sensitive to that, and I really dislike when I see that. With the Sally Field character, Megan, I kind of feel like she started as maybe more of what I would see as a bit of a salacious-y, clickbaity, getting the scoop kind of journalist. But I think she really had a conscience, and I think she really did feel responsibility as the story wore on. Obviously, we don't want to give away too much, but I do think she felt responsible for certain things, and she endured a couple of hard moments. Things like there's a scene between her and Paul Newman when he was very upset with her.
Well, for very
good reason.
Because of her story.
Something bad happened.
His best friend, yeah.
However, what he did was bad.
Yeah.
It was criminal.
Yeah.
I also think it's very interesting that scene in a modern movie that is not 40 years old, I don't know how that would have played. I honestly look at that and go, a modern person watching that scene from 40 years ago would see what happened, see her reaction, because she was obviously very traumatized by it. And yet she was being the one that was apologetic. She was the one leaving with the tail between the legs, as if she took her, air quotes, punishment, as if she deserved it, and then was just going to kind of weather the feelings and the trauma as payback for that. Oh my gosh, if you showed that today, I cannot even imagine how that would play out. And I honestly cringed thinking about it, watching that scene.
The problem is, and not that what he did was right.
No, it was not. Let's be very clear.
But what she did was completely wrong too, ethically, actually, in some ways. And she decided to take her career instead of, she wasn't human. Actually, as it turned out, she went with the story instead of being human.
The collateral damage,
and she knew that could happen,
was the risk she was willing to take.
That's right.
And unfortunately, given the circumstances, and again, we're not trying to give away all the things here. We want people to see this film. It is a very good film, and you usually ask me that, and I would say I do think this is a good film. But yeah, she was leaning into the very eager reporter side of herself where she was trying to be successful. She was trying to make a name for herself. She was trying to expose something. And what's funny is that actually what she was doing was right a previous wrong that she had committed against Paul Newman's
She was
character.
actually trying to help Paul Newman, but in the long run, it actually hurt everyone.
So she made a bad decision early.
Yep.
She printed a pretty salacious story that she really didn't have backing for.
Mm-hmm.
That story got out. That story did damage to Paul Newman.
Yep.
Then the ability for her to undo the wrong, to right the wrong against Paul Newman was to go another rung and another layer deeper and then potentially negatively affect another person that runs in his life and his sphere. And then instead of being smarter in that second go round, like she should have been the first time when she was examining the story about him, she just pushed the gas.
That's right.
And then yet again, she caused another incredible piece of collateral damage that was, in my mind, like as an adult, you know, looking at this, or as a more experienced, like working world, former journalist, whatever, is probably not a risk I would have taken. The story she was reporting on was not life and death. This is not a whistleblower story where it's like, we're talking about 3 Mile Island, people could be dying here, Chernobyl-esque kind of stuff. This was not that. I would have, as a journalist, more than likely at this stage of my life, said, this is not the one to blow the whistle on.
Right.
Like, if it had a greater impact in the universe, this was not that.
The other real big thing about this film that brings up, and Paul Newman's character puts it bluntly and perfectly, when someone's cleared, and let's say the paper is wrong and they do a retraction, it's never on the front page.
Nope.
All of what they did that was wrong can always be on the front page, but when they try to undo it, it's never a front page headline, and that's always been a problem. So they almost have autonomy with things. Well, at least papers used to. Well, now Twitter and everything in social media, anyone can post anything, and it's deemed credible, which is completely wrong. So as bad as it could have been back in the newspaper days, you still had a little bit more credibility because you had to go through so many hoops, and now you don't have to go through those hoops anymore.
Perception has always been reality.
Yeah.
Since pretty much the beginning of time.
Yep.
But
it's worse now.
It's worse now.
Because everyone has access.
Yeah. Everyone, if you really think about this, is unfortunately an armchair journalist.
Yeah.
And I want to give one quick shout out here. There are times where I have experienced regular people who are very passionate about certain things in the social realms, whether it's like in social media, whether it's podcasting, you know, whatever it is, being better at investigative work than people who are paid and trained to do investigative work. And I have to give a shout out to the people that I have seen do that. There are some incredible true crime, for example, journalists. You know, I'm kind of hung up on that genre. But I will say, one of the reasons that I'm so hung up on it is that the quality of the investigative work and the journalism of some of the non-journalists, or some are actual journalists, but some are not, is so impressive that I do think there are some people that do it better than the rest. But in general, Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and all of these, Facebook, whatever, even LinkedIn, they've put in our pocket the ability to be someone with a voice, which in some ways is both thrilling and many more ways, to me, more terrifying.
To me, the fallout is far more damaging than the good.
It is to me,
Yeah.
especially being someone who, I graduated from college something like 24 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that not to age myself here, but I'm saying it because it's incredible that when I wound the clock back only 24 years, I was graduating with a degree in print journalism.
Yep.
I have a degree in magazine journalism from Syracuse, that I believed I would be a print journalist for the rest of my life. And that long form print journalist in magazines specifically. And that is incredible that once like 2004 hit and that Facebook revolution really started, and that wasn't that long after I graduated, I watched that entire landscape change.
Yep.
And I morphed my own career as a result of it because A, you got to make a living, you got to survive. But B, there is a part of me that felt like something that was for a precious few, that was really the group that was trained to do the work, became completely watered down because now anybody can do it. And that's not to sound elitist, but it's to say,
well, no,
we learned a lot about what to do.
You were trained.
Yeah.
It is a skill. It is a gift. Not everyone is meant to do it. And you're seeing all of these basically glorified blogs being considered news, and it's pretty terrible. Look, I got a degree in communications to be in radio broadcasting, and didn't go into it as a career, but I'm kind of using it now for the podcast. And frankly, anyone can do a podcast, and some are really good at it and some shouldn't be doing it. But hey, public choice. You can listen to whatever you want.
And it's funny that in my current work now, I work more in the corporate communications space. It's so interesting because I lean into my journalistic skills probably every single day.
Yeah.
And what's very interesting is while I used to manage public relations as part of my career, I no longer do that. But when I did, and even now that I'm familiar with it, although not using those skills, I really can see in the business I'm in now how manipulative and out for the story some journals are. And we're talking about people who work for very reputable news outlets. I'm not going to name them.
No.
But there are several reputable outlets left, of course. And I see things that make my skin crawl. Things that are just very shameful to me. So we've developed some very bad habits in the modern time. It's not that there weren't always people that did this. And I think that this story, Absence of Malice, really tells some of that. But the redemption on the back end of what can happen today, I don't know if you can ever really redeem it because it doesn't really go away. Like in the past, you'd print something and sure, maybe it made it on microfiche and maybe people could still look it up. Okay, fine.
Sure.
But the way it lives in perpetuity today, I mean, the story she published here and the negative effect that story had, this could have actually damaged future generations as a result of even reading it. It's in today's modern world. If this had happened today, the way that it happened, it would have been so much more damaging than it was then. And it was pretty damaging back then.
Yeah. Without giving away, because it is part of the ending, for me, the best scene in the movie is with Wilford Brimley. And I love.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
He just kind of.
He made that.
He came in and he's in it. He's in it for only, I would say, 10 minutes, but he steals the show. So we'll quickly go through. You said you liked Sally Field's character. How did you feel about Paul Newman in the movie?
I liked him in that it was a very complicated character, but in a way, he's a strange anti-hero. Like, I wanted to root for him, and I wanted him to not be ruined by this. I think he was also quite savvy enough and had come from, like you said, kind of a crime family. In that
but
even
he wasn't a criminal. No.
He certainly had weathered the storms, and I think he was
street
strong
smart
enough and street smart enough to be able to do it. But I got to tell you, the scene with Sally Field when he is in the warehouse and almost like punishing her for the negative impact of the second story she released, attempting to clear his name, which clearly made everything worse. That was very hard for me to watch and very disturbing. And I do think that it made it hard for me to identify with him after seeing that. It was very violent and it wasn't right. And it made me think like, okay, so fine, this guy is like not a criminal and he did not do this thing that he's accused of now, but you could almost see it in his blood. Like he obviously came from bad. He had the tendency to be bad. He showed it in that scene.
But
it made you feel less bad for him.
Playing devil's advocate, if that was your friend and that had happened to your friend and the person that basically caused it showed up, would you react the same way?
I think I would have been completely not okay. I don't know if I could have exhibited the type of violence he was exhibiting. I think it was very specific.
But you know people special to you that may have done the same thing that Paul Newman did.
Well, I think that for me personally, I can't see myself in any kind of universe having reacted that way, but I do think that there is no question that a person would be very upset at her, even if she was showing up to apologize, which she clearly was.
Yeah.
There is no doubt that a person encountering her after that was going to be very upset.
No, and I don't think she knew that would happen, too.
No, and she played that scene incredibly well.
It's a hard...
It's extremely intense, and her shock value of it was like... It was almost like you can tell what a great actress she was and was going to become, because you really felt like in that moment she found the way to envision that she didn't know what was going to happen, and then when it happened, she exhibited every bit of shock and trauma that you would expect someone to exhibit who went through that. And it really was, as awful of a scene as it was very powerful, and it really said something.
Yep.
As terrible as it was.
Well, again, they don't make movies like this anymore, frankly, because there is no Sally Field, that there's no equivalent to a younger actress like her, and there's no Paul Newman. Those two guys don't exist anymore, and I don't think they can get away with a movie like this because they just don't have the star power. And so it's a very talky movie, but it's really well done.
And they have a very complex relationship.
Yep.
That, again, I'm not sure I agree with that relationship, but I do think that they acted it well and they played it well. And, we're talking about a younger reporter. She's probably in her early to mid-30s. In the film, he would be more a mature man. He'd be his mid-40s.
Early 50s. Yeah.
Early 50s. So,
which he looks great, by the way. He's in, actually,
he looks amazing.
Like mid-50s, I think, when he was doing this.
He looks amazing, and he's so suave and so cool in the way you would expect someone to be the type of character he was playing. It was very, very well acted. And I would recommend this movie. If somebody hasn't seen this, I think that they should. I think it's going to be interesting to watch it through the lens of modern journalism. Yeah. But I would recommend it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for watching. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And
I did.
I picked another winner.
Yay, and thank you so much for thinking of me to discuss this one. It really does hit close to home, and I really appreciated being able to talk about it.
Okay, then I can do Good Luck Chuck 2.
Nope.
If you enjoy this podcast and are an iTunes user, please do the show a favor and head on over to the official iTunes page for Damn Good Movie Memories. Be sure to leave a rating and a review. This will allow the show to appear higher in the algorithm and spread the joy of this podcast to the masses. If you are not an iTunes user, you can still listen and subscribe on Podbean at damngoodmoviememories.podbean.com. Be sure to like us on Facebook under our Damn Good Movie Memories page. You can also listen to a limited number of episodes on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and be sure to tune in next week for an all-new episode of Damn Good Movie Memories.